Mm, are good to go.
Uh,
And
okay.
by all means, introduce yourselves.
Okay. Okay. My name is Corey Hyde. I'm a graduate student, PhD student working with the Research Institute for Studies in Education with Arlene, and we work closely with Madeline with her Women in Ag Extension and Outreach programs. Through Iowa State, we do a lot of evaluation with her, with Madeline and her programs. So um, today I'm going to be talking about what we've been working on, the evaluation team has been working on the with the programs that we've looked at. I've been working with RISE for 4.5 years now, and working on this project since we started it that long ago. Are people familiar with the BFRDP project, or is that not something people are familiar with?
I think it varies. You might want to give a short background.
Okay, so the Beginning Farm and Ranch program development team has sort of collected this database of programs, of farm programs, and the evaluation team has been looking at the different ways that programs are using evaluation, about how they're collecting data, analyzing data, and then sharing those evaluations, those results, and then the results of their programs. And so I've been looking at sort of two different things, one being how are programs using evaluation, and then the second piece is what are the evaluations of these programs telling us? What are common trends among programs? What are some gaps in the program evaluation? What are some things that are missing out of programs? Like what do women want more of based on what we found? So that's sort of a brief overview of what we've been working on. So today, my presentation, I'm going to cover a little bit of an overview of the catalog that we've come up with. We, as in the entire Beginning Farm and Ranch team, the leadership team, and then why it's important to do evaluation, sort of the methods behind the meta-analysis, some results and findings that I found, and common themes, gaps, and then recommendations. And the recommendations we'll also cover more on Thursday in the presentation. Madeline's going to lead on Thursday about, so we did a program, we have this data, now what do we do with it? Okay, so the program catalog, it initially focused on finding programs that fell into the focus areas of the project, which were mechanization, safety, and ergonomics, farm scale and profitability or business management, leadership, land transfer, access or stewardship, and then some other topics were food systems, farm planning, and then legal issues, which legal issues is part of one of the main focuses, but it tends to cut across all the other programs, and it's less of it. There are a few programs that focus solely on legal issues in farming, so that we found, not that they're not out there, just that we weren't made aware of them. So the programs that we found, about 45 total programs were collected and were compiled into this catalog by the leadership team, primarily all of them focusing on beginning farmer education. And then they were organized by area, by their topic focus area for the program. So all of the financial planning ones are organized together, all of the safety and ergonomics are put together. And then it includes a brief description of each one, their contact information, website information, who their target audience is, and some of their overall goals and objectives. So that's just an overview of what we did to begin with to identify some of these programs, based on what as a team, what we were familiar with. So by no means is this an exhaustive list of programs, because there are probably hundreds, if not thousands, that exist just in the United States. So, but these are some that we were made aware of through this process. So the evaluation piece, there's two different sort of objectives that we had as that as a team we wanted to discover effective programs. So the ways that we did that is looking at how evaluation is being done to share the results, to share the impact of programs. So which programs could we tell had a positive impact based on what evaluation they were doing. And the other piece was to determine what sort of evaluation, what were the most common ways people were evaluating, what measures were they trying to, what measures were they using, and in what ways were they using them. So I'll talk a little bit later about some of the trends that we found, the different tools that were being used and why different tools are being used and what information they collected. And then what programs were using the results for. So how are they reporting results? Were they writing journal articles? Was it primarily for promotional materials? Were they coming up with publications or sharing things at conferences? So looking at what were people doing what were educators doing with their reports and their results. And then the second piece was for educators. Why is evaluation important for educators? So a lot of times we found that educators would do evaluation and use it for themselves to show where they needed to make improvements, and sort of share amongst their own little community what the impact of those of the program was. But it can also be used to show the broader impact, the public value of it. It's becoming more and more popular with for funders to see the impact and the value of these programs. So that can be an important piece of evaluation. Also showing where improvements need to be made, what measurable outcomes are visible based on the improvement. It can also be used as a needs assessment, and then also to show gaps, to show to show what is lacking, to show what we need to improve upon. If there's 15 programs all doing the same thing in one small area, this can be an opportunity to show where maybe programs could branch out a little bit and focus on other things if there's already programs doing the same thing close by. So there's lots of different ways that evaluation can be used just as educators. So out of the big program catalog, Madeline and I sat down and narrowed it down to 20 programs that we were going to focus on for our analysis. And we did that just because it was improbable to be able to do all 45. And we wanted to be able to focus on a variety, like an equal variety of each. So we picked about 4 or 5 from each of the focus areas that we wanted to really look at and include in the analysis. We thought that was a good number to focus on for the analysis. I spent a couple months contacting over email, via phone, looking up websites, looking up reports for programs, collecting all of this data, collecting data from these programs, and based on what they had available. There was a lot of times programs didn't have access to data because they hadn't collected in a while, or because it had been archived and it wasn't accessible anymore. So there's a lot of reasons why, a lot of different variation in the availability of data, and the different sort of the different ways data was being presented. So it ended up coming down to about 12 programs total that I was able to collect enough data on to do some kind of analysis. And oh, hold on, I think I jumped ahead. Okay, so the methodology that I used was to assess existing curricula and identify gaps in the curriculum, as well as best practices in current programming. That's sort of the overall purpose of the methodologies. The data analysis was done from reports or from raw data. So I got a variety of different formats of results from programs. Some of it was already analyzed and put into reports or published materials. Some of it was raw. Some people, some programs sent me a compilation of their survey results that they hadn't done anything with because they didn't know really what to do next with it. That shows an important piece of what next steps would be for once you collect data on your program. What do you do with it next? So that showed a lot in the process of what was sort of where some of those gaps were. All right, so some of the general findings. Hold on, I need to move my picture here. I can't see myself, or I can't see the screen. Okay, so general findings for overall program themes that we found. Some of the most common themes in programs were networking, financial planning, and business management. So networking across the board was something that was either focused on in the program. It was something that was important to participants that maybe wasn't the purpose of the program. It was something that was brought up a lot in open-ended parts of surveys where people said that, one of the things they appreciated most was the ability to network, specifically networking with other women in the fields, in agriculture, in farming. And the women-centered environment to help facilitate the learning was also another big was an important piece of a lot of these programs, specifically the ones we looked at that targeted women and beginning farming women. That was one of the most common themes that was found. Networking as far as leadership opportunities, access to leadership opportunities, as well as awareness of leadership opportunities came up a lot, where participants in programs, particularly in conferences, weren't aware that there were so many opportunities for leadership, and that they appreciated that opportunity to take advantage of them, to learn about them, and to network with them. And then connections to local professionals and organizations. This was pretty common in some of the programs that took place over an extended period of time, over a couple weeks or months. Such as Annie's project, or with some other programs, that they were able to connect with local people that can help them with their financial planning, with their land stewardship, with legal things, making those connections that they might not have had access to before. Financial planning was another one that was particularly important and frequently the target area for the program, and the understanding of finances, reducing farm expenses, and increasing confidence in financial planning were really big patterns that came out of a lot of these programs as being important to participants, as well as important information. And business management, which falls largely under financial planning, or financial planning falls largely under business management. But a lot of times there's steps that participants weren't aware that they should be taking as far as managing a business and viewing their farm or their operation as a business. And so that was another common theme that came up over and over and over again in these evaluations, as being important and being significant to educators and to participants. Madeline, I know you're not feeling well, but feel free to jump in at any point to kind of help me out here.
Thanks, Corey. Let me know if you have any specific areas you want me to talk about.
Okay. All right. So some more general findings. Madeline, did you want to say anything about these program themes, these thematic things that came up?
Sure. So, as well, Corey was mentioning, these were some common things, And I think one thing you didn't mention, Corey, is that we looked at Women in Ag conferences, multi-session classes such as Annie's project, also the Women Caring for the Land has a learning circle model of involving women. And so I just kind of wanted to mention that we had looked at a variety of different educational programs. And some of these were, you know, just a one-time event, and some were those multiple meetings and coming together with a similar group. And so these were just some of the most common themes that we saw across all the programs.
Yeah.
Not any of the programs actually, for example, it was not a program about financial planning, but the
Right.
financial planning was included in, say, among the conference speakers or among the programs. So it was kind of interesting looking at the different delivery methods. I'll turn it back to you, Corey.
Okay. Okay. So the next chunk of findings that I want to talk about is the different evaluation tools that were used and how they were used. So again, these are just overall general themes, they were more like best practices, what were most commonly used, what ideas, what information came out of each of these tools. And again, there's different people and different educators are going to use these differently. So they're not like the end all be all. This is the only way to do it. So focus groups were used a lot. We saw this with women caring for the land, Women, Land, and Legacy. Also, there's a couple other programs, the Midwest Organic Sustainable Education Services, their Moses program, and there was another one, the Holistic Management International program used these focus groups to sort of facilitate ideas. To those programs used the focus groups, sometimes very informally too, where they were just trying to gain this idea of what people were thinking about through conversations. So they weren't always formal focus groups. Now, Women Caring for the Land does facilitate more formal focus groups, or they had for their evaluation process. So sometimes these are really formal and done in a really programmatic way. Other times they were used more informally to sort of figure out what do participants want? What do women want out of these programs? What are they looking forward to the most? What is it that they are looking for out of this program? Follow-up surveys, which usually take place sometime after an event. So conferences, one-day events, weekend-long events. A follow-up survey is sent out sometimes a week, sometimes up to several months after the event. And oftentimes these are used for program improvement. So a lot of times these will go out so we can make improvements for next year when we do this event. We saw this a lot with conferences, especially. Follow-up surveys are a good way to sort of figure out, okay, so this speaker was awesome. We definitely want them to come back. This speaker maybe not so popular. Maybe think about something else that could be a focus for that time period. The food was really great, or some of the ways to improve programming. And then the pre and or post surveys, which tended to be used after longer courses. So if the course took place over several weeks or months, the pre and post course surveys can show changes in knowledge or behaviors as a result of the program. So Annie's project and the Managing for Today and Tomorrow programs they do a survey, sort of like a pre-test and a post-test. So they do a survey at the beginning asking questions about level of knowledge for a specific topic, and then asking the same questions after the program and see how much improvement there was, to show that, yes, this program does have significant improvements in knowledge in these specific areas. And those tend to show some of the most improvement over time.
And Corey, I'll just jump in here a moment. So with the pre and post course surveys with a longer course, such as Annie's project, which is typically 6 weeks, the really interesting thing with those surveys is that we are able to show behaviors changed and actions taken. So we found that women did create a marketing plan. They did review their balance sheet and determine some of the financial ratios, for example. So the pre and post surveys were very, very helpful in actually showing the steps that women were actually taking. So not just learning, but moving beyond that to taking those actions and taking steps to manage their farm further. So I think that was especially a great value of the pre and post surveys. I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah. Okay. And there were other tools used as well for evaluation, but these ones came up as being some of the most common, some of the easiest to also implement on limited time and limited budgets for evaluation. All right. So some of the data then that came from the participants, the actual evaluations themselves, and so this I'm changing focuses a little bit from the overall meta-analysis of the program, the evaluations used by the programs, and looking specifically at what information did I get from those evaluations. And so this is from participants. And overall, across the board, the evaluation data always showed positive impact. There was some positive impact that the program had on participants. And so that was one of the more important things, and not necessarily a surprise either, that these programs are doing good things and doing positive things for participants. So a little bit, like I've already said, the pre and post surveys showed the most changes over time. And as Madeline said, showing changes in behaviors, showing action steps. Those tools do tend to be more useful in something that takes place over time. And it's really cool to see for educators also that yes, this program did make a difference, and I have the data to show that positive knowledge gains were made, action steps were taken, rather than some other retrospective of surveys. So these ones tend to be really useful for educators for those courses. Again, focus groups showing what women want out of programming. So this is where we get a lot of information of women saying they want more opportunities to network. They want to get to know more farm women, having that opportunity to connect with other women in the field, and feeling a little bit more at ease when it's a conversation to share what they're looking for, or maybe some things that are missing that they're hoping to see. And then also follow-up surveys showing how programs can be improved can also be a good way for people to sort of give more feedback that they might not in a focus group, because follow-up surveys can be more anonymous. So they can feel more comfortable saying things that maybe they didn't appreciate so much, or that they want to see improve for the next time. And so those do give a bit more of an anonymous opportunity for participants to show. Okay, so I do want to take a little bit of time here to talk about some more specific feedback that I have seen from the analysis that I've done. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on how what some programs are asking for in their evaluations, and what we're seeing, and what that means for them, what they can share with that information. So for example, for pre and post, in changes in financial knowledge. So this is a bit of a combination of like financial knowledge being a really important topic that comes up, and being able to show that changes in financial knowledge using pre and post. So the Holistic Management International could show, based on their pre and post, that there was an enhanced understanding of farm finances. We can see that based on the feedback from their participants. 79% reported that they are implementing new or improved record keeping of their finances. 42% were able to say after, based on their pre and post, that they have reduced farm expenses. So it's kind of cool to be able to see that that those improvements made from beginning to end in that time. Now, Holistic Management International takes place over several months. So they do the way that they're tracking, or the report that I read for their tracking is they tend to do multiple evaluations throughout those 10 months. Annie's project they do their pre and post. So one of their topics is on financial management, and you can see that their knowledge changes improve from I know some average like 1.8 response out of 4 to I know a lot, which is 2.7 out of 4. So we can see that there is some changes, and with those numbers from Annie's project, we can do more in-depth more in-depth analysis, and we can show statistically significant improvements, which then can be used for, that information can be shared, it can be made public, it can show the success of the program and help the program grow and help make improvements to some of those programs.
I'll just explain something here to Corey. As you notice here, we did look at some of the programs that Holistic Management International was doing. And I just wanted to explain to our audience that we looked at programs that had the potential to benefit beginning farm and ranch women. So we did not limit it to only programs that were reaching out to the audience of women. We looked at some other programs too. Holistic Management International was just one of them. So we did look at programs that were serving a variety of audiences. And these, again, were programs that our team felt like that could benefit beginning women. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yes, thanks, Malin. All right, so networking being another piece that was very important to participants, and often the focus group model, this is a lot of information came out of the focus group model with networking. And so the Moses program, using their focus group model, several of their participants stated they want to use those contacts and networks forward. So throughout that program, I believe it was one weekend, they made contacts and forged networks with other participants and with their facilitators and educators, and their intention to use those contacts. And Women, Land, and Legacy, I've mentioned before, developing relationships with other participants, with other women, and that they wanted to continue to hold on to those relationships, and it being an important part of why they participated was developing those relationships. And so follow-up surveys, for business management, one of the big conferences we looked at was the Nebraska Women's Conference, and their report, evaluation report, and how they're able to show with their survey, or with their follow-up survey, that 38% of the participants are changing management practices, and more than half of those included marketing and budgeting skills. So what that kind of tells us is that business management was important to a lot of the participants, and then among that, looking for more marketing and budgeting. And so we can see that this is an area where it is important to participants, and it's an area that is worth looking at and exploring as a way to provide more information to participants. Almost half of the participants want more information on business operations. So wanting to look at how are other people operating their farm or ranch businesses. And then one other piece that came out of that is we were able to look at the data based on age breakdowns, which can be really interesting, where we found women over 60 were more likely to want information on farm and ranch business operations than women in younger groups. And that it can be meaningful to some people. It might not mean anything to other people, but I know in the state of Iowa, a lot of land is owned by women that are in that age bracket. And so that would be a significant piece for us looking at the conference business model or the conference model, and that, offering some of those topics in a conference, because it would be important to the participants that would be a part of that conference in Iowa. So there's a lot of information that we can get out of surveys, even if you don't intentionally ask questions. So being able to break down responses based on age or based on land size or based on farms type, we can sort of pull some of these more specific results, which is always interesting, I think as an evaluator. So some of the gaps that we found through the evaluation analysis was the biggest one was the difficulty in getting data, and it highlighted one of the most significant gaps, which is oftentimes data either isn't collected, or if it is, it's not shared with other people, and so that can be useful still for educators of that program to have data and look at it themselves. And it can also be helpful to share that with other people, because like I said, oftentimes data has been collected, but there's this sense of like, oh, I don't know what to do with it now, or why I should do anything with it. And so hopefully this helps educators understand the importance of evaluation and how that can be shared with other educators, and that can be a useful tool. Anything you want to jump in with?
Sure, I will jump in on that, Corey. Because of this finding, we are going to focus our session on Thursday on how to actually report some of this data. And we also found that sometimes evaluation can feel kind of overwhelming. People don't have a lot of time for evaluation. So what we're going to focus on for Thursday is a more a streamlined way to get some important evaluation from a program, and then really focus on sharing it through a success story, and here's what we did, and here are some of our results. And so just kind of helping you walk through an idea of keeping the survey tool itself to a minimum in order to spend more time than sharing that with your stakeholders, sharing the results. So that's what we're going to focus on Thursday, and this metadata analysis just really helped us narrow in on that as a need.
Yeah, thank you. So again, tune in Thursday for how to use tools, what tools are available, and sharing results. Sharing results is one of the best things to do with the evaluation, I think, because it's interesting for other people. It can also be used in a variety of different ways when you have these results. You can put it on your website, use it for promotion, for publications, for professional or academic conferences, and other people benefit from it. So the more it's out there, the more useful it can be. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Corey. Well, we would like to take questions from others, and also to let you know that we do have the a file with all of the 45 programs that you'll be able to take a look at on the conference website, as well as a written report that has quite a few details about the metadata analysis that was done.
Super, great. Thank you so much, Madeline and Corey and Arlene, who I know is there in spirit. Anybody have questions? Feel free to post or go ahead and unmute your microphone and ask. I am one of those people who struggles with evaluation because I am a big picture person and I'm always sort of out front thinking about the next program. And so by the time we wrap up the program and we sweep up and we turn on the lights, I'm kind of like, okay, well, I'm done with that. Let's move to the next thing. Fortunately, I have people in my life like Beth Holzman and Madeline Schultz and Corey Hyde that sort of keep me focused on the importance of finding this. So I totally empathize with people who struggle to get evaluation done.
Yes.
Yeah, it can be a real challenge. And like you said, Mary, as educators, oftentimes we're focused on doing the programming, and we know that we're doing good work because, you know, we're in the field, we're talking to people, we're seeing results. But the evaluation can really help you share those good results with others. It could be funders. It could be other women that you would like to work with in the future, and maybe, you know, need to show that, hey, you know, these programs do have a real benefit, and here's what some past participants have said about that. And, you know, we all have a challenge in choosing how to spend our time, because we have a lot of opportunities as educators for all kinds of different programs. So the program evaluation can really help us choose which programs are most effective, and, you know, where we can spend our time for the biggest amount of private and public value.
So if it's not going to steal your thunder from Thursday, I have a couple of questions. One is, money is always scarce. I don't know a single program that has more funding than it needs, and so hard choices have to be made. And it seems to me, in my own life and in the lives of programs that I've worked with, I have seen when you need to rebudget, it's almost always evaluation that kind of gets chopped and limited, and that limb kind of gets pruned. So I'm wondering if you have any rule of thumb for like how much to budget a program for evaluation, or how to plan for that.
Yes, and it is significant. Prior to working with Corey and Arlene at RISE, I worked with Mandy Anderson, and she taught me that evaluation should be 10% of your program budget. And to a lot of people, that sounds like a lot of money, but I feel like we started doing that, and it's been very beneficial because we have been able to show our program results. And that in turn has helped us to obtain additional grant funding, additional funding from our university system, and so forth. So we struggled to make that investment up front. I'm not going to say it was easy. And essentially when we started doing program evaluation, we wrote that 10% into grants. So 10% of a grant budget that we were writing was for evaluation. And that's how we got started. And then we were able to, you know, get some more funding through our university once they saw, oh, wow, they really are doing some good work and they're getting some good results. And so, yes, it's important to support that effort. Does that answer your question, Mary?
Yes, it does. A lot. So 10%, folks. That's a good rule of thumb to keep in your pocket. So my next question has to do with, is related to money, and it has to do with internal versus external evaluation, and whether we should really be evaluating our own programs or whether we should be looking externally for sort of a more arm's length person.
Well, one of the things that we wanted to do with Annie's project was to get some external evaluation. And that's why I identified RISE, which is the Research Institute for Studies in Education at Iowa State University, as a third-party external evaluator. And what that means in the particular case of Annie's project is that evaluation data is going directly to RISE. They are inputting this data into the system, or it's coming in online. And so for example, it doesn't go through National Annie's. It goes directly to RISE, and they analyze the data and then report that to the local educators as well as National Annie's. So it has been super helpful because it's helpful for the local educators because they can get their reports back and see how they're doing. But then on a national level, Annie's project is able to aggregate that data and see how this program is affecting women across the country, and see how it might be different in certain areas of the country or similar. So that's been very, very helpful to have that third party kind of credibility with that, and not only credibility, but just professionalism. The Research Institute for Studies in Education, which Corey and Arlene are a part of, has a lot of experts in evaluation. I've certainly learned a lot from them along the way, and that's been really valuable because we do have evaluation experts within our extension system, but they're stretched very thin. It's hard to get some of their time, and I try to use our extension evaluators as much as I can, but it's certainly been very helpful to work with RISE as a third party.
Great, thank you. And then Anna has a question here, and she is joining us from Puerto Rico. We always have problems finding someone to evaluate programs. Could you share some resources? Any tips on how to find people, or any organizations that might be willing to work in a broader region or outside of their state?
Yeah, I am not familiar with that. Are you, Arlene?
I am. I mean, other than us, we also do that kind of thing. We'll travel outside of Iowa, but there's also the American Evaluation Association that you can go to that has evaluators all over the country, and that would be available. You could look online on their website, and you could look for the type of expertise that you want to that you're interested in.
Okay, we'll get that link up on the website. That might be helpful for others as well, especially if you're in a really rural, isolated place. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. And we're getting close to end time anyway. So let me start by just saying thank you to the three of you. I hope things warm up by Thursday. And Madeline, I hope you feel better.
Oh, thank you. I'm sure hoping I feel better because the team is counting on me to do most of the talking Thursday.
All right. Well, you go drink some tea.
Yes. So they're actually calling for wind chills of 60 below tonight here in Iowa. And so they have actually canceled classes and closed the university for 2 days. And this is unheard of. Like, this never happens. So it's we are in a very unusual circumstance here this week.
So, Arlene, Anna just said it's 90 degrees in Puerto Rico. Just Just saying, if you want an evaluation gig now, might be a good time.
We'll travel. We travel.
In fact, Anna, you probably can get a whole crew of us there in the wintertime. All right. Well, thank you guys so very much. I am going to shut the recording off. I'm not seeing any more questions. And you guys have about 10 minutes before we move on to our next session. So go ahead, stretch, refill that cup of tea, whatever, stretch, do whatever. And we'll see you back here at the top of the hour.
Well, thank you.